Joining us now, Congressman, Republican, 7th District, Virginia, Dr. Dave Brat. Dr. Brat, good to have you.
Hey, John, great to be on. Thank you.
Tariffs. Now, you know where I stand on this, Dr. Brat. I'm a protectionist. The president, I'll just put that disclaimer out there. One of the reasons I've been for Trump for a very long time is because I believe in protecting the U.S. worker and U.S. manufacturing industries. So the president putting a 25% tariff on steel, 10% on aluminum. 90% of our aluminum is imported, although we have the resources here to make it. Our steel plants are running at 37% capacity. So the president said, if you can't make steel, you don't have a country. If you can't make aluminum, you got a bigger problem. And so he's put these tariffs so he can get, and more are coming because we run a $600 billion annual trade deficit. The president would like to see that evening out so we can keep more of our jobs and money in the United States. You're an economist. You taught economics for 2 decades. What say Dave Brat?
Yeah, well, my whole position on trade was and still is, I'm a free trader, but free trade when you look at what we're doing to the U.S., right? We have $2 trillion in regulation on our people, OSHA, safety standards, all this kind of stuff, which it can be good, but some of which we've overcooked. And after we charge a $2 trillion tax on our people in the terms of regulation, we say go out and free trade. And so when Trump comes in and says, hey, we're going to make this fair, and on top of this, the rest of the world is dumping on us, right? China's been dumping stuff on us. And for 20 years, we let that go intentionally because we were hoping China would tilt toward a more free market democratic country after they saw what wealth can do for them. And so they've seen what wealth can do for them. They've grown like crazy, but they have not opened up on the liberty or freedom side. And so in my district, I'll just tell you, we don't have a lot of steel production, which this is going to definitely help. But I've gotten, over a dozen calls from folks that use steel, and that's going to be the trade-off here. And so we got to make sure we get this right. There's 140,000 jobs where people, produce steel, and then there's 5 million manufacturing and related jobs that use steel as an input. And so I got a bunch of those in my district. And so I think you can do both, though, right? I think you can say, hey, China, we're going to fight you on a bunch of these sectors and do it in a way that doesn't hurt the folks here who use steel as an input. And so we'll work to make sure we get this thing right.
Well, okay, but let's be candid with each other. The manufacturers, whether they're in your district or in Washington State, they're putting out bids and they're buying the cheapest steel they can, just like I would or you would if we were a capitalist and owned a company, right? So if Chinese or Canada can dump steel in the U.S., and the Chinese is the best example because they pay slave labor wages, right? They pay their people like $5 a day in a rice ball,
right? And
then they further subsidize with communist government money the production, so that they produce steel way, way under market cost. Then they dump it in the United States. Obviously, if I need steel, I'm going to buy that if I can save money. I'm not, evaluating the geopolitical impact of that. I just need steel for whatever it is that I'm trying to manufacture. So right. I'm going to buy the cheaper steel. If you put the tariff on, there's no question. The price of steel is going up. It has to go up. And we can debate how that'll affect the car industry or any steel, but it has to go up. But the trade-off is you're going to be paying more for steel, but you're protecting a core industry in the United States that protects jobs and that also has a national security tie-in. If we're just looking for the cheapest goods and services, we'd all be working at Walmart as greeters, Dave.
Yeah, well, no, I get the logic in your thing, and that's why I said, the key distinction for me is if there's free trade going on, that's one thing, but I don't think there is. If there's dumping, right, for the folks out there who had economics 20 years ago, that's when what you said happens, right? Another government can subsidize and pay for exporting a low-price good, lower than the cost of production into the U.S., right? And so we can compete with anybody, right? Once you put our worker together with our productivity. But when you throw in, Chinese now multi-trillion-dollar government subsidizing it to get a foothold and taking out our industry, that I'm in favor. That you got to look at, right? You can't lose entire industries, which we've done in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and those folks have been hurt by it. And so Trump was very sensitive to that side of the issue, and I'm glad he was. And I think we can do what you're saying and yet get this thing right without targeting maybe just a flat tariff, right? We can look at a little bit more finesse in how we apply this thing and still have the same outcome.
All right, so let me ask you this, Dr. Brat, as an economist. What is the effect of the trade deficit now that we run? I think it's like $600 billion, like $580 billion, this trade deficit. What is the effect of that on the economy right now as it stands, and what would happen if that was balanced? Like, just walk us through what would happen.
Well, the deficit just shows you're not emphasizing the production side of the economy the way you could be, right? And so it's good. We're importing everything. We're rich, right? As incomes go up, we import more and more and more. And so we're importers, we're shoppers, we're consumers. And so we're running a trade deficit. And trade is good, right? For the globe. You can just picture a Robinson Crusoe economy, right? If you got one guy working, the output is nothing. Like if you have 2 to 3 people coming in, sharing tasks, specializing, and comparative advantage and all that kind of thing. And so you want trade, but we just have to set the right rules of the game. And there's plenty of room to get this thing right? What President Trump ran on, everybody knows, right? We've taken a back seat to China as we've encouraged their next generation to become more free marketeer. And so the deficits themselves are a sign that we're not exporting enough goods, right? That we've got to get more serious. And there's fundamental reasons for that, too, right, that go beyond the trade agreement. I think that's what's always missing from these conversations. When you got generations of kids who come out of high school and they don't know what a business is, you've got a problem, right? In higher ed, when the vast majority of faculty are anti-business and anti-capitalism and anti-free market, that hurts your productivity. And when you don't invest in capital equipment to put in the hands of your workers, which we have not done for a decade or so, that hurts your productivity.
Right.
So trade is the outcome, like you're saying. It's a bad measure. It shows you we're behind the curve. Why aren't we exporting? Why aren't we more productive? And unfortunately, it's because for decades we've been making the wrong decisions on K-12, higher ed, re-education, mentoring, apprenticeship programs, all these kind of things that now everyone's freaking out about, rightly so, because wages have been flat in this country for 30 years. And so trade is a snapshot that shows you, hey, we're not there. But it's not all because of trade. It's because of some other fundamental things that we've gotten wrong for a long time.
So let's get back to this $600 billion deficit that the president keeps talking about. He says, look, this is money that's going from the U.S. somewhere else. He said, I would like to stop seeing the outflow of cash going into other countries. If they were to balance this, what does this mean? Just like nobody explains, what does that mean if it's in balance? How is that a good thing?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's a free country, right? It's a free world. It's a free market setup for the most part still, if we can keep it that way. And so you're sending money abroad, but you're getting the Chinese and the rest of the world's goods back. And so that's the trade-off, right? So money's flowing abroad. You're getting low-priced goods coming in. The Chinese market's growing like crazy. I think they're still growing at 7% a year because they've gone toward free markets. And so that in itself isn't a bad thing. It's a bad thing in that if it represents the stronger structural issues I was just talking about, which it probably does, and which both you and I agree on, and that Trump agrees with, right? And that is, if you have lost your productivity, you can have your cake and eat it, right? We should be a manufacturing mecca still, We should have capital,
Right.
and our tax cuts, by the way, are going to help this out. Wait till you see the new capital statistics coming out, right? The growth in capital investment because of our tax cut. That's going to be the key driver of growth coming out. So we start to fix some of this, but human capital is probably right up there with capital in importance. And the left for all these years has downplayed business, right? And so people talk about family values and all this kind of thing. What's happening to the American family? It's under assault, right? The federal government's been taking money from the family pocket. They haven't been training your kids in, getting them ready for a job. And we got to turn that around. That's what's at stake in the country. And so you were talking about elections earlier, too. We got to stay on those fundamental issues. And it too often drifts off into personality and drama and all this. Just stay right on the issues. Who's got the better track record? And right now, part of the reason is the data haven't come in yet from the tax cut. Once the American people see the total effect of what we just did, they're going to be shocked at how positive it is for them, their family, the Commonwealth, the country, and the kids going forward. And so that's and the Democrat data was clear for the last decade. They had the Congress. They could have done it. They had the Congress and the Senate for 2 years. They could have passed anything they wanted, and they didn't do any of this stuff, right? And there's never a sign. They want increased government control and your taxes coming into the federal government, and that does not produce growth and help trade.
You got that right. Let's talk about the special election a week from tomorrow in Pennsylvania. Make a prediction. You think you're going to win that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we just got to get the word out, like I was just saying, on the good economic news. Usually it's the economy, period, right? That's the phrase, right? It's the economy, and we've got the economy now. For 8 years and for 30 years, the average person in Pennsylvania, their wages have been flat. No one's looked out for them. The Democratic Party, as I just said, had control. They didn't do anything for the American worker. They used to fight for the American worker. Now they divide everybody up into warring factions, and it's a food fight. And so the Republicans don't think that way. We believe in true unity. We love everybody across the board. We want everybody to do well. We put in policies that give everybody the opportunity. If you're pro-business and pro-growth, you can jump into the economy and do very well for yourself. So if we get that hope message out there that's pro-economy, we brought down regulations. I bipartisan legislation last week. We had a great committee meeting with my ranking Democrat member, and we worked together and agreed, and it made headlines because we had agreement. But on business certification, for a lot of the poorest of the poor who are cut out from the labor market when they want to do hair braiding or hair salons or service jobs, and you need a business certificate with hundreds of hours before you can join an industry. Well, guess who puts that in place? The regulators, the ones who want to stop the free market from working. And so we had bipartisan agreement to try and tear down a bunch of that stuff. There were tragic stories. A woman who lost her life because she lost her business, couldn't feed the family anymore. I mean, it's just horrendous, terrible stories. And there's stuff we can do to give everyone that chance. And we're working against them right now. And so if Republicans share this message that we care about everybody economically, we'll do well.
I think that's it. If that election, March 13th, hinges on the economy, the Republicans are going to win. If the Democrats are able to cloud the water, then, it could be a different story. I've got to ask you this. I've had a bunch of people this week text or tweet or email me and say, would you please ask the congressman, when the next time he gets on your show, when are you going to hold the next town hall meeting?
Yeah, well, we've had teletown halls and Facebook town halls and senior town halls and industry town halls and whatever all across the district. The general town halls, just the folks that are asking, maybe they're not aware, but go out to the Facebook and look at the Blackstone and the Chesterfield town halls. I love having town halls, right? I always had them. I had them every month in every county, all over the place. And it's kind of the professor side of me. And so I love getting up and talking. I'm one of the few politicians who gets on a radio show and just goes over issue by issue by issue, right? Without having to filter their comments, carefully craft statements, and all this kind of baloney. And so I love them, but when I got up, I couldn't speak. And it's on tape. Everyone can go look at them, right? Go Google the Blackstone, and on the Chesterfield, they were swearing at the preacher while he was praying, lobbing F-bombs from the front row. It wasn't just a few. The papers reported on it. So I love to have them, but the left, that's what I'm saying, right? It's the same story here. This all happened after the President Trump won the election. Then the town halls became impossible. Mm-hmm. And I liked everyone there. I went around and shook hands with every single person yelling at me afterwards. I said, "What's up?" They just said, "We think Hillary should have won. We're going to, take it out on you guys." And I said, "Okay, but it's making you also say you want to have a civil discourse." The left is saying, the press never writes on this, right? The left is saying they want civil discourse while they're lobbing F-bombs on the placards, and the left sees it every day, right? All the marches, and so we got to do better. If we're going to have civil discourse, both sides have to be civil.
Dave, we're out of time. You're right. Just that everybody knows, Dave comes on my show for a half hour a week. There is zero dialogue that goes on. There's no, what are the issues? What are the topics? I can ask Dave about anything, and it's freewheeling. So you know where your town hall meeting is? Right here. John Fredericks Radio Network. That's your town hall meeting. Dave, thanks. John Fredericks Radio Network. John. More information, davebrat.com.